Right, I just recorded this, but I didn't like how it came out. So let's explain mouse weight, importance, how to figure it out. So mouse weight is usually measured in grams, and usually you can find it advertised on the product, especially it's an ultralight. Like I'm pretty sure these three mice. And if you want to figure out the weight, most mouse reviews will mention them. I don't mention the weight on all of the mice I review, because sometimes it isn't particularly relevant. Sometimes you can just Google it, but generally I do try to mention it, and most other reviews should as well. If a review doesn't mention mouse weight, that's probably a good indication that you really shouldn't. You should probably look for another review, but it's kind of irrelevant. And you have heavy mice, such as the Razor Naga Trinity, which is what I'd consider to be the heaviest sort of semi-usable mouse. Actually, okay, not really. I'd say the heaviest usable mouse would be, I don't know what that'd be, but Razor Naga Trinity with the 12-button side panel weighs in at 125 grams, which makes it one of the heaviest mice in the market. Now, this is not as heavy as the G502 with all the weights in, which is about 140 grams. But I think it's the highest weight mouse that anyone really uses. There are mice that are higher than that. ROG Spatha, I believe, weighed in at about 170. Sometimes, though, on product pages, they get the wrong mouse weight. It's either too high. It's usually too high. Usually, this is more and more obscure mice, like the Bloody A70, which is a common Minecraft mouse, for example, advertises its weight at being 150 grams. The Bloody A70 is not 150 grams. It is closer to 121. They get to 150 measure mixed it with cable. And sometimes, some mice straight up just weigh with the box, which is obviously a completely inaccurate measurement. So, if the packaging weight sounds too high, that's probably because it is. For a frame of reference, a G203 is about 85 grams. So if mouse feels lighter than that, it's probably lower than that. If mouse feels heavier than that, it's probably heavier than that. And the G502 is about 125 grams, and then the weight's in. So if a mouse feels lighter than that, and lighter than like a G203, then it's, yeah. And usually, why are mice super heavy? I don't know. I think some of it's just intentionally, or kind of because it's easier to make a heavy mouse than it is a light mouse. Also, maybe because of build quality. And like this mouse, like the Razor Naga Trinity, I'd give two explanations for why it is heavy. One, it is an MMO mouse. It's not really made to be moved around too much. And two, it has interchangeable sidewalls. So, it has to have all these buttons in, and you have this magnet system in it. And it's not like this mouse wouldn't be heavy without this, but that's part of what some of the weight comes from. There isn't really a mouse with a lot of buttons that is sort of what I'd consider lightweight, except for the Razer Naga X, which Razer recently released, but nobody seems to care. You can buy that if you want. It's with a lot of buttons that does not sacrifice by having a high weight. I also forgot to mention that generally wired mice weigh less than wireless mice because wireless mice have to store battery and some other components in them. So the fact the final mouse made a 41-gram wireless mouse is really impressive from an engineering standpoint. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the G-Wolf Skoll Mini, which has to be one of I don't know if it's the lightest mouse in terms of, I don't have it plugged in, there's a cable, it's not wireless. I don't know if it's the lightest, like, real mouse. I believe it's a little lighter than the Ultralight 2, but like a tiny bit. So I think this might be the lightest, like, actual mouse. The only ones I can think are lighter are the G-Wolf's HSK, the M1 and M2K, which I don't really think count. And then the Starlight 12, yeah, that counts, but you can't really get that. And the Cox like CM600, which I believe goes under another name. It's like an OEM mouse, but that one's extremely small. It has like a weird egg shape. I mean, hey, if weight's all you're targeting, that's not a bad option. And MM710 weighs a couple grams more than that. So lightweight mice. And obviously these mice have holes, which is a common method of reducing weight. Generally, another common method is removing non-essential buttons. Like this mouse does not have a DPI button, they actually have them on the bottom. Some mice will remove all the buttons, and when you get super extreme like the M1K, it literally is just 2 clicks to remove side buttons and a scroll wheel. The M2K actually added back a scroll wheel, but it's literally a gram heavier. And that's usually some of the ways they sacrifice weight, but generally holes, basically making a thinner internal shell. Final Mouse used magnesium instead of plastic, but no other company has really done that. And getting rid of RGB is usually an easy way to sacrifice weight as well, because RGB usually does add a couple grams to a mouse. So, you know, that's a couple ways. And which weight is, and also hollowing out scroll wheel, that's another common one. And also, what? And then I think this begs the question, what weight should you buy? It depends. I think most people will not have problems going super light, like an MM710. Like, this is the first computer mouse used. I think but nobody would have any major problems with this. But sometimes, you know, if you've used the G502 for 4 years and then you switch out your mouse for the Model D or a Model O, it's gonna be a hard adjustment. And some people just end up, you know, using a lightweight mouse for like a couple hours and being like, oh yeah, no, this sucks, and then ran about lightweight mice the entire rest of their lives. Just amazing. Yeah. So what should you buy? It depends on what you want. If you want a heavier mouse, alright, let me explain the benefits. So a lighter mouse is going to be easier to move around, and it's going to cause less fatigue generally. So, you know, since it's lighter, it's physically easier for me to move it, and it's also going to cause less fatigue. Mouse like the Razer Naga Trinity will help stabilize your aim. If you play on a heavy mouse like this, it'll stabilize your aim. So you're not, so if you like, are a bit sort of shaky, then a mouse like this will help stabilize your aim, which could be helpful for some cases. And for FPS shooters, weight generally is pretty important, but for other games it's not quite as important. If you're not moving your mouse around much, I think you'd still want to go as light as you can, but yeah. And if you play on low sense, weight is much less relevant. So, no, wait, no, if you play on high sense, weight is much less relevant. And yeah, so what should you buy? It's kind of up to you. I would personally go as light as you can handle, at least in terms of mouse size, because sometimes, you know, big mice generally weigh more because they're larger, and small mice weigh less because they're smaller, and so you'll probably want to go as light as you can, but you also don't want to sacrifice, you know, everything. You don't want to be using the mouse that's too light, too small, and making your hands cramp. That's not a problem with the mouse weight, that's a shape thing. And there are small mice that are really heavy. The G203. So, yeah. I don't know. Personally, I would go lighter, but I don't think you should write off a mouse because it's heavier. It just kind of depends on what you want. But for most people, I don't think weight's going to be the biggest consideration of the mouse. And for me, it personally isn't either. I think clicks and sensor matter a lot more to me. And also cable and feed are pretty important as well before I really can start to consider weight. But that's just me. So hopefully this helped you out a bit. I don't know.